Jaurès was a French socialist leader. Initially an opportunist Republican, he evolved into one of the first social democrats, becoming the leader in 1902 of the French Socialist Party, which opposed Jules Guesde's Revolutionary Socialist Party of France. The two parties merged in 1905 in the French section of the Workers' International. An antimilitarist, Jaurès was assassinated at the outbreak of World War I, and remains one of the main historical figures of the French left. Early career. The son of an unsuccessful businessman and farmer, Jaurès was born in Castres, into a modest French provincial haute bourgeois family. He was the first cousin once removed of the Admiral and Senator Benjamin Jaurès, who was named Minister of the Navy and Colonies in 1889, and of the Admiral Charles Jaurès. His younger brother, Louis, also became an admiral and a Republican Socialist deputy. A brilliant student, Jaurès was educated at the Lycée Louis Le in Paris and admitted first at the École Normale Supérieure in philosophy. In 1878, ahead of Henry Bergson, he obtained his agrégation of philosophy in 1881, ending up third, and then taught philosophy for 2 years at the Albi Lycée, before lecturing at the University of Toulouse. He was elected Republican deputy for the Département of Tarn in 1885, sitting alongside the moderate Opportunist Republicans, opposed both to Georges Clemenceau's radicals and to the Socialists. He then supported both Jules Ferry and Elie Couteau and Gambetta, historian. In 1889, after unsuccessfully contesting Castres, this time under the banner of socialism, he returned to his professional duties at Toulouse, where he took an active interest in municipal affairs, and helped to found the medical faculty of the university. He also prepared 2 theses for his doctorate in philosophy, De Primis Socialism et Germanici Lineamentis apud Lutherum, Kant, Fichte et Hegel, and de la réalité du monde sensible. Jaurès was a highly influential historian of the French Revolution. Research in the archives in Paris Bibliothèque Nationale led to formulation of a theoretical Marxist interpretation of the events. His book Histoire Socialiste shaped interpretation from Albert Mathis, Albert Sobol and Georges Lefebvre that came to dominate teaching analysis in class conflict terms. Well into the 1980s, Jaurès emphasized the central role the middle class played in the aristocratic Brumaire, as well as the emergence of the working class sans-culottes who espoused a political outlook and social philosophy that came to dominate revolutionary movements on the left. Rise to prominence. Jaurès was initially a moderate Republican, opposed to both Clemenceau's radicalism and socialism. He developed into a socialist during the late 1880s. In 1892 the miners of Carmaux went on strike over the dismissal of the leader, Jean-Baptiste Calvignac. Jaurès' campaigning forced the government to intervene and require Calvignac's reinstatement. The following year, Jaurès was re-elected to the National Assembly as Socialist Deputy for Tarn, a seat he retained until his death. Defeated in the election of 1898, he spent 4 years without a legislative seat. His eloquent speeches nonetheless made him a force to be reckoned with as an intellectual champion of socialism. He edited Le Petit République, and was, along with Émile Zola, one of the most energetic defenders of Alfred Dreyfus, army officers, and an educated newspaper readership. He approved of Alexandre Millerand and the Socialists' inclusion in the René Waldeck-Rousseau cabinet, though this led to an irredeemable split with the more revolutionary section led by Jules Guesde forming the Independent Socialists Party, SFIO leadership. In 1902 Jaurès was again returned as deputy for Albi. The independent socialists merged with Paul Brousse's Possibilist Federation of the Socialist Workers of France and Jean Allemagne's Revolutionary Socialist Workers' Party to form the French Socialist Party, of which Jaurès became the leader. They represented a social democratic stance, opposed to Jules Guesde's Revolutionary Socialist Party of France. During the Combes administration, his influence secured the coherence of the radical socialist coalition known as the Bloc des Gauches, which enacted the 1905 French law on the separation of the churches and the state. In 1904, he founded the socialist paper Humanité. According to Jeffrey Kurtz, Jaurès was instrumental in the reforms carried out by the administration Émile Combes, influencing the content of legislation and keeping the factions within the bloc united. Quote, following the Amsterdam Congress of the Second International, the French socialist groups held a congress at Rouen in March 1905, which resulted in a new consolidation, with the merger of Jaurès's French Socialist Party and Guesde's Socialist Party of France. The new party, headed by Jaurès and Guesde, ceased to cooperate with the radical groups, and became known as the Parti Socialiste Unifié, pledged to advance a collectivist program. All the socialist movements unified the same year in the French section of the Workers' International. In the general elections of 1906, Jaurès was again elected for the Tarn. His ability was now generally recognized, but the strength of the SFIO still had to reckon with radical Georges Clemenceau, who was able to appeal to his countrymen to rally to a radical program which had no socialist ideas in view. Although Clemenceau was sensitive to the conditions of the working class, Clemenceau's image as a strong and practical leader considerably diminished socialist populism. In addition to daily journalistic activity, Jaurès published Les Prouves, Affaires Dreyfus, Action Socialiste, Études Socialistes and, with other collaborators, Histoire Socialiste, etc. In 1911 he traveled to Lisbon and Buenos Aires. He supported, albeit not without criticisms, the teaching of regional languages, such as Occitan, Basque and Breton, commonly known as patois, thus opposing, on this issue, traditional Republican Jacobinism, antimilitarism. Jaurès was a committed antimilitarist who tried to use diplomatic means to prevent what became the First World War. In 1913, he opposed Émile Drian's three-year service law, which implemented a draft period, and tried to promote understanding between France and Germany. As conflict became imminent, he tried to organize general strikes in France and Germany in order to force the governments to back down and negotiate. This proved difficult, however, as many Frenchmen sought revenge for the country's defeat in the Franco-Prussian War and the return of the lost Alsace-Lorraine territory. Then, in May 1914, with Jaurès intending to form an alliance with Joseph Caillaux for the labor movement, the socialists won the general election. They planned to take office and press for a policy of European peace. Jaurès accused President Poincaré of being more Russian than Russia, whereas Viviani complied. In July 1914, he attended the Socialist Congress in Brussels, where he struck up a constructive solidarity with German Socialist Party leader Hugo Haas. On the 20th of that month, Jaurès voted against a parliamentary subsidy for Poincaré's visit to St. Petersburg, which he condemned as both dangerous and provocative. The Caillaux-Jaurès alliance were dedicated to defeating military objectives initiatives aimed toward precipitating war. France sent a secret mission, headed by Raymond Poincaré, to bring Russia on her side in a committed web of alliances that equally obliged Britain. Always a pacifist, Jaurès rushed back to Paris to attempt an impossible reconciliation with the government. Russia, unable to accede to Germany's desire to cease mobilizing, Kriegsgefahrzustand had activated its forces. The last holdout, Prime Minister René Viviani, told Sazonov that France would order mobilization when she was ready. Shortly before he died, Jaurès had addressed the Chamber of Deputies in an impassioned speech in which he pleaded for social justice and peace. Furious at Russia's undue influence over French foreign policy, he asked the rhetorical question, "Are we going to start a world war?" Quote, it sealed his fate. On the 31st of July, 1914, Jaurès was assassinated by a fanatic. At 9 p.m., he went to dine at Café Croissant 146 Rue Montmartre. 40 minutes later, Raoul Villain, a 29-year-old French young nationalist, walked up to the restaurant window and fired 2 shots into Jaurès' back. Jaurès had been due to attend an international conference on the 9th of August, in an attempt to dissuade the belligerent parties from going ahead with the war. He died 5 minutes later, at 9:45 p.m. Villain also intended to murder Madame Guillot with his 2 engraved pistols. Tried after World War I and acquitted, he was later killed by Spanish Republicans in 1936. Shockwaves ran through the streets of Paris. One of the government's most charismatic and compelling orators had been cut down. Even opponent Poincaré sent his sympathies to his widow. Paris was on the brink of revolution. Jaurès had been partisan for a general strike, and had narrowly avoided sedition charges. One important consequence was that the cabinet postponed the arrest of socialist revolutionaries. Viviani reassured Britain of Belgian neutrality, but the gloves were off. Jaurès' murder brought matters one step closer to World War. It helped to destabilize the French government, whilst simultaneously breaking a link in the chain of international solidarity. Speaking at Jaurès' funeral a few days later, the CGT leader, Léon Jouhaux, declared, "All working men, we take the field with the determination to drive back the aggressor." As if in reverence to his memory, the socialists in the chamber agreed to suspend all sabotage activity in support of the Union Sacrée. Poincaré commented that, in the memory of man, there had never been anything more beautiful in France. On the 23rd of November, 1924, his remains were transferred to the Panthéon. Political legacy. Jaurès and Guillot knew, after he was cleared of his wife's murder, that they would have been able to expose the president's secret deal with Russia. Instead, a policy of détente would have been adopted with Germany, preventing war and the inevitable carnage from 1915. Russia had covertly subsidized Poincaré's election campaign, and he had therefore abandoned socialism for another party and warfare. Even if Germany intentionally condemned Belgium to occupation, they had already accused Russia of starting the conflict. In popular culture, numerous streets and plazas in France are named for Jaurès, especially in the south of France, as well as in Vienna, Plovdiv, Tel Aviv and Haifa, Buenos Aires, and also in Germany. Jaurès appears as a character in many period French films and TV series, sometimes as the main subject and sometimes as a supporting character. Jacques Brel wrote a song, Jaurès, and recorded it for his his last album Les Marquises. In it, he wonders why Jean Jaurès was killed, while lamenting on the life of the working class. Les Corins, a song by Pierre Bachelet, contains a reference to Jean Jaurès. Why avait-il aimé le jour de la Kermesse? Une photo de Jean Jaurès. Al Stewart's song Trains includes the lyrics, "On the day they buried Jean Jaurès, World War I broke free." Jean Jaurès appears in the poem The Mystery of the Charity of Charles Péguy by Geoffrey Hill. Metro stations have been named after Jaurès in Paris, Toulouse and Lyon. Metro placed Jean Jaurès in the 1976 film Maîtresse. A character looking at a Parisian map laments, "There are too many avenues named after Jean Jaurès." The Russian dissident historian Georges Medvedev was named after him. Jaurès figures in Jules Romain's epic fictional work Les Hommes de Bonne Volonté, and his assassination is depicted in Roger Martin Dugard's novel, The Taboos. Since 1981, a video clip of François Mitterrand placing a rose in front of Jaurès' tomb at the moment the Socialists returned to power in pomp and circumstance, is often played on French television. In the play Hans im Schnackenloch by René Schickler, the character Gavril represents Jaurès. Jaurès is the idol and moral compass of the lead character, the Union leader Michel, in the French film The Snows of Kilimanjaro. Michel quotes Jaurès throughout the film to justify and reflect on his actions.